about us.
Hi there, I'm Old Lady Gibson.
Or so they tell me.
I hope you can figure out the rest.
Here we are again with another Fallout New Vegas Iceberg. And yes, if you're just joining us, we currently have another fully realized New Vegas Iceberg on the channel. And also Fallout 4 for you guys to enjoy. New Vegas has so many theories and weird obscurities that we wanted to create 3 separate videos to cover them all. These are not parts, but full icebergs, from the tip to the bottom layer. So make sure you're subbed so you don't miss out on the last New Vegas Iceberg and the soon coming Fallout 3 and 76 icebergs. Starting us off with the simple one that a lot of people still don't know. Both the Cazadors and the Night Stalkers are not mutants that were created by radiation. So the Night Stalkers are these creepy looking snake dog hybrids that were actually cooked up before the war by Dr. Boris. He mixed rattlesnake and coyote DNA together. Why do that in the first place? Well, supposedly he did it to save rattlesnake DNA, thinking they were about to go extinct. But his memory's kind of fuzzy, and at one point he admits he might have done it just because of a dare from another scientist. Classic Big Mountain, right? Anyway, these things turned out to be way more dangerous than expected. When they were first created, they wiped out almost everyone working on the shipping department at the X8 Research Center. Only one guy named Skippy made it out alive. Even after that mess, another scientist, Dr. Figgis, figured they could still make use of them. So what does he do? He releases the Night Stalkers into the X8 testing area just to observe how they would behave, which was a bold move. After the bombs dropped, a bunch of these things got loose. They've been slithering and prowling their way across the Mojave ever since. Some even made it all the way to Baja. Cazadors are another lovely gift from the labs at Big Mountain. They were mutated and supersized thanks to a bunch of DNA experiments by none other than Dr. Boris. He swears the experiments happened on a Tuesday, maybe in May, probably 2003. He's not really sure. Originally, these lab-grown monstrosities were kept locked up in the Z14 DNA splicing lab, but surprise, surprise, that didn't last. A bunch of Cazadors ended up escaping Big Mountain Crater and started showing up in nearby places like the Mojave Wasteland and Zion Canyon. And once they were out, they multiplied fast. Boris still insists that they never escaped and they can't even reproduce, despite all the evidence saying otherwise. As they've spread across the wasteland, people have started calling them Cazadors or Cazadores, which probably came from Spanish-speaking survivors in the areas where they've popped up. And honestly, it fits.
Now this one's infamous among veteran New Vegas players, yet few places strike fear into players' hearts quite like the Deathclaw Promontory. On the Mojave's eastern fringe, just across the Colorado River, lies this unmarked location. There's no convenient quest marker here, no friendly NPC to guide you, just a faint dirt trail leading you straight into what might be the deadliest patch of terrain in the entire game. This spot is home to around 36 Deathclaws of all shapes and sizes.
Damn, I didn't even go
Alpha
over there
males,
before.
Fearsome
What?
mothers, agile juveniles,
I haven't even
and
gone
even
over there.
baby Deathclaws, all crammed into one brutal, jagged maze of hills and cliffs. Unlike Quarry Junction's scattered chaos, these Deathclaws act as a tightly knit pack. If just one catches your scent, every single beast in the area charges simultaneously, acting as a cohesive unit of beasts. Players often face the daunting challenge of thinning the horde with explosives, creating a risky balance between survival and destruction. Yet despite this near certain doom, we can't help but feel drawn by some of the game's finest loot. Hidden among these bloodied rocks and beastly corpses are treasures worth every risk. Rare high-end weapons and the exclusive Remnant's power armor. This armor set, typically only obtained through a questline, can be found here without the quest hassle, making it a tempting prize. Adding an eerie realism to the horrifying spot, Deathclaw Promontory sits exactly where Nevada's real-world Promontory Point lies, anchoring Fallout's ambush zone firmly into actual geography. For lore hunters, there's even the intriguing discovery of 3 Deathclaw eggs giving us a glimpse into a breeding ground right under our noses. We can't help but wonder if this spot will end up in Fallout's upcoming Season 2 release. In the gaming world, New Vegas is legendary. Not just for its gameplay and storytelling, or even the bugs that came with it when it rolled out, but for a notorious event known as the Metacritic Scandal. Here's the crazy story behind the infamous 1% that cost Obsidian Entertainment dearly. When Obsidian partnered with Bethesda to develop New Vegas, the deal included a massive bonus, but only if the game achieved a Metascore of 85 or higher on Metacritic. Unbelievably, Fallout New Vegas narrowly missed that mark, landing at an 84, just one single percentage point short. This small margin meant the developers received none of the promised bonus, sparking endless controversy and conspiracy theories in the gaming community. Rumors quickly spread, with some players convinced that Bethesda deliberately rushed Obsidian to release the game prematurely, sabotaging its review scores out of spite. This theory was even more widespread considering the amount of cut content that never made it into the game, which if you haven't seen our first New Vegas Iceberg video, consider giving it a watch since we cover pieces of the cut content like the game's boundaries. However, Chris Avalon, one of New Vegas's key figures, has repeatedly dismissed these theories. He even praised Bethesda, highlighting how supportive they were during development. Still, fans can't help but wonder, why didn't Bethesda use a sliding bonus scale instead? A scale would have meant missing the target by just 1% wouldn't erase the entire bonus, only a fraction of it, making the sting far less severe. As Chris himself admitted, losing everything based on a single percentage point felt devastating. Ironically, despite this Metacritic miss, Fallout New Vegas was an incredible commercial success. Bethesda shipped over 5 million copies by early November 2010, generating more than $300 million from sales and digital downloads alone. Clearly, us fans adored the game, making the narrow miss on Metacritic even more bitter. But was it a conspiracy? Not quite, just a business deal gone awry.
Alright, so when you roll into the Tops Casino during the Ring-a-Ding-Ding quest, the first person you bump into is Swank. He's one of Benny's right-hand guys. Now if you play it smart and you pass a few speech checks, you can actually clue Swank in on what Benny's really up to. If you succeed, Swank basically lets you go upstairs to Benny's suite with all of your weapons, which is pretty helpful if things go sideways. But there's also this other way to actually convince Swank to your side. You can find some evidence to help your case, like Benny's distinctive lighter and his weird brand of cigarettes, which can then make Swank more willing to believe you. If you tell Swank that Benny's scheming behind Mr. House's back, he asks you what you want to do about it. If you tell him you're ready to handle it now, Swank sends Benny up to his room, basically setting him up for you. Once you've taken care of business, you can go back to Swank and he just straight up asks,
"Is Benny taken care of yet?"
You get one reply, yes, he's dead. Swank then gets hyped and says,
Guess that makes me the boss. Ring-a-ding.
It's surprising just how many ways Benny can be dealt with. It makes you wonder what New Vegas would have been like with another 1.5 years of development time. I'd be surprised if anyone hasn't seen the crashed UFO in New Vegas at this point, or at least heard of it. It was on almost all of the icebergs we came across, so we figured we'd throw it on. I'm assuming some people might have missed it because they don't take the Wild Wasteland trait at the beginning of the game. If you head up north of Harwitz Farmstead and a bit east of the Brooks Tumbleweed Ranch, right around where the mercenary camp usually is, you come across something pretty weird. Usually it's just the 3 mercenaries standing around a fire. But like I said, if you have Wild Wasteland, you'll actually find 3 aliens near a crashed recon craft. The ship is wrecked and you can't get inside. These aliens are the only ones in the game, and they look exactly like the ones from Fallout 3's Mothership Zeta DLC. 2 of them are armed with tri-beam laser rifles, so they're not just here to say hi. They will mess you up if you're not careful. But if you kill them, you do get to keep their alien blaster, which has probably the most rare ammo type resource in the entire game. Yes, the Tops has a pool. It's kind of hidden away, which is why people usually don't run into it. It's out back behind the casino. There's a little courtyard area and it's not huge, but it's got a nice vibe. There you'll find a pool right in the middle. There's also some palm trees scattered around and a brick wall enclosing the whole space. You'll usually find a few gamblers hanging out there, along with some of the chairmen just keeping an eye on things or they're chilling. It's a pretty relaxed spot compared to the inside. It's not the most in-depth thing on the iceberg, but it might surprise a few of you. It actually surprised me. I had no idea.
Let's talk about one of New Vegas's most underrated minigames, Caravan. It might not get as much hype as Witcher 3's Gwent, but Caravan is one of Fallout New Vegas's best kept secrets, and it's likely due to its complicating rules. I'm not saying the game is revolutionary by any means, I'm just saying it's relatively low key. You'll first catch wind of Caravan from a guy named Ringo in Goodsprings, who hands over a starter deck. Mostly Tops casino cards, though it's missing a king of clubs. From there, you're off scouring the Mojave for more cards. whether that's by trading with merchants, looting unlucky wanderers, or winning other minigames. To build a valid caravan deck, you need 30 cards with no duplicates from the same set. Have a King of Spades from set A and another from set B? No problem. 2 Kings of Spades from set A, and that's an illegal move within the game's rules. The game itself is a tug of war over 3 stacks called caravans, each aiming for a total of 21 to 26. You basically place cards in ascending or descending order, and face cards become your wild strategy pieces, boosting values or sabotaging your opponent's stacks. Once you've sold a caravan by locking in that 21 to 26 sweet spot, you've got a claim, but your opponent can still fight back with some clever plays. Bet big, and while the house doesn't make a fuss, your rival might raise you with NCR bills, Legion coins, you name it. Win 2 out of 3 caravans first, and the pot's yours. If you've never tried it, give it a shot. Caravan is a surprisingly deep card game hiding under the wasteland's dust. And although it's not the most profound card game we've seen in RPGs, it's still worth trying if you have yet to touch it.
So, you feel like playing a game?
Chances are you've at least heard of, or maybe even proudly own, the legendary Prima Official Game Guide. Authored by David S.J. Hodgson, who also crafted the official guide for Fallout 3, this guidebook isn't just a simple walkthrough. It's a treasure trove of detailed lore, item descriptions, maps, character backstories, and hidden secrets of the Mojave itself. The collector's edition hardcover is particularly sought after, boosting an additional 32 pages filled with fascinating concept art and in-depth details about New Vegas's factions and settings. But here's where things get intriguing. Despite its incredible usefulness and beautiful presentation, the guide isn't perfect. Eagle-eyed players quickly notice some curious inconsistencies between the guide and the actual game itself. For example, during the quest My Kind of Town, the guide incorrectly states you'll need a barter skill of 50 to persuade Major Knight to assign more troops to Prim. In reality, the game only asks for a barter skill of 20. Similarly, the guide mistakenly involves powder gangers in the quest Hard Luck Blues, despite them having no actual connection to the quest. Smaller errors also pop up too, like referring to Interstate 15 near Sloan interchangeably as the Long 19 and Long 95, or stating that using Doc Mitchell's chemistry set requires a speech skill of 25, when in fact it calls for a science skill of 25. But let's be honest, these errors don't take away from the coolness of owning such a guide. In fact, they might even enhance its status. Today, having an official strategy guide for Fallout New Vegas is more than just practical. It's a badge of honor, proof that you've walked the Mojave in a uniquely old school style. As for our take on the matter, I believe pieces like Doc's chemistry set calling for speech versus science skills was an unintentional editing error, while other pieces such as the small inconsistencies in quest details could be due to cut content, potentially seeing that the fullness of the game wasn't ever truly released. What are your thoughts? New Vegas is full of surprises, including cut content where you can hear your companions scream and shriek in terror as their bodies are lit aflame. These immolation screams fortunately, or unfortunately, never quite made it into the game. Deep within New Vegas's unused game files lies audio that's unsettling. These audio files include distressing screams and shrieks of your trusted companions, recorded specifically for when they're tragically set ablaze during combat. Imagine the visceral horror of hearing Boone, Veronica, or even Rex howling in agony as flames engulf their bodies. Sounds that would add a disturbingly realistic element to the brutality of the already brutal game. I mean, come on, we already have the crucifixions and slaves, they may as well have added this too. Although these sounds were ultimately excluded from the final release, they remain hidden in the game's code. The discovery of these unused audio files has become legendary within the Fallout community if you know where to look. But I figured I'd let their screams play out in a few seconds here, and you could tell me which actor or actress did it best.
So we all know Old Lady Gibson, right? The sweet old woman who runs the scrapyard near Novak. She comes off as this harmless trader just living her best retired life. But what if she's not as innocent as she seems? Here's where things get weird. Not too far from her scrapyard, up near the mountain, there's this little unmarked spot called Gibson's Shack. You actually go there during Veronica's companion quest. Now inside the shack, you'll find a skeleton. and a full-on murder scene. Now yeah, finding a dead body in the Mojave isn't exactly shocking, but this one's different. The shack has her name on it. It's literally called Gibson's Shack.
Well, I'll give you a hint. They used to just call me Gibson. I hope you can figure out the rest.
That does feel intentional, and I really don't think the devs named it that by accident. So that begs the question, if the shack used to belong to old lady Gibson, why isn't she living there now? And why is there a dead body inside? Well, there are apparently multiple theories on this one. What if the skeleton is the real Gibson, and the woman at the scrapyard is someone else entirely, an imposter? Someone pretending to be her, maybe to take over the scrapyard or just blend in. It would explain why she's living out there instead of in the shack with her name on it. Or maybe it's her late husband that she talks about. She could have murdered him and then left him in that shack. This one has a little more plausibility in my opinion, as you can actually find a severed finger in there, implying that this guy wasn't a good guy, especially if you've played Fallout 3. In that game, you can find a perk that drops fingers on bad characters when you kill them. You then give them to the regulators who will pay you caps for the fingers, and then it gives you positive karma. So maybe her husband wasn't a good guy and she took care of him. There's also the fact that Elijah also used the shack at some point. Maybe he's tied up in the story in some way. All in all, it's just kind of strange. Let's talk about Victor, that overly friendly cowboy robot you meet at the start of the game. He's hanging around Good Springs, keeping an eye on things for Mr. House as one of his remote scout bots. At first, he just seems like a helpful old-timey robot who saves your life and points you in the right direction. But he actually has a bit more going on, especially during the Ghost Town gunfight quest. You guys know the story by now. The Powder Gangers show up and get kicked out, which places you in the middle of the two factions. In this instance, you need to side with the town. You can then recruit the townsfolk to actually join in the upcoming fight. Now here's where Victor comes in again. You can ask him to join the fight and he'll say yes.
Trouble with rustlers, huh? Count me in, partner. Those varmints will be running home with their tails between their legs soon enough.
But when the Powder Gangers roll in, he ghosts you. He doesn't show up at all.
Howdy, partner. So when do the rustlers show up? Now just hold on. I meant it when I said I'd help you. Guess I must have dozed off. That's never happened before.
If you've got at least 25 in science, you can ask him about it afterward.
All right, but put everything back the way you found it.
Holy shit, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Override? That can't be right. Probably just a malfunctioning tube somewhere. I truly am sorry I couldn't help you, partner. Was there something else you wanted to talk about?
Turns out he was remotely shut down. He'll even say it was a command he's never heard before, which is kind of suspicious considering who he works for. Was House testing us? Did he want to see if we could handle ourselves? It's just weird that he would send Victor in the first place to watch us and then not intervene.
If you ever ventured into the Mojave searching for a challenging beast to tackle, you've likely run into the fire gecko, a creature known for its scorching breath. But did you know there's an even bigger, meaner version lurking in the game's code? Gojira, or simply Gecko if you spawn it via console command, is 3 times bigger, sporting a terrifying fire gecko model the size of a super mutant behemoth. By using the following console command, you can bring this gigantic gecko to life. Be forewarned though, he's a big sumbitch boasting 8000 HP and a unique Gojira flame with a base damage of 400 and a DPS of 3200. Practically anything standing near this beast is done for in seconds. Although it carries the name Gojira, the original Japanese name for Godzilla, this titan was never intended to roam freely in-game. According to various sources, Seth, a developer, created Gojira just for fun. In the early stages of the game's development, he apparently unleashed it on Camp McCarran to watch it terrorize NCR troops. This Godzilla would have been game-breaking. It trumps every major foe, including the X-42 giant Robo-Scorpion, the legendary Deathclaw, and the legendary Bloatfly. It is so formidable that a single flame breath attack can annihilate entire squads of enemies. Even the most feared bosses in the game crumble in seconds against it. Essentially, Gojira tips the scales of difficulty so severely that keeping it in the base game could have shattered game balance. Gojira has cemented its place in New Vegas legend as a stress test creature that was never meant to see the light of day.
Alright, let's talk about Roxy, the cyberdog companion you can create in the Old World Blues DLC. She's not your typical follower like Boone or Eddie. Roxy is actually made in the X8 Research Center by fusing a regular dog with a robot. You can build her yourself once you find the right holotape, which is located downstairs on a big table near the door to the institutional test area in X8. After you grab it, head down the hallway to the left of the X8 entrance. That's where the splicing terminal is. You then pop the holotape into the terminal and boom, you've got Roxy. Roxy's a bit different from the other companions in terms of control though. She doesn't use the standard companion wheel. If you want her to follow you or stay put, you've got to talk to her directly. Also, she's kind of homebound. She won't leave the X8 facility. If you try to walk out, she'll just sit by the entrance. But what's cool is that Roxy will return at the end of the game in a slide. If you make Roxy and Rex is still alive back in the Mojave, the game's ending slide will say that somehow Roxy escaped Big Mountain and eventually met up with Rex. The two of them then go on to have a litter of cyber puppies called the Boston Terrifiers.
There's no fucking
How
way
this
they
works
have cyber
is
puppies.
anyone's guess, because they
Well,
aren't just organic pups.
There's no way they're just born with fucking electronical parts on them.
The slide says that they construct them. They're cyber puppies. So they're probably built using the machines where Roxy was made. The bigger issue is how the hell they're supposed to grow with cybernetic limbs and organs. Also, you can only get this slide if you have the Wild Wasteland trait, so the whole thing is kinda iffy anyways. But it's something cool to learn if you haven't seen it before. So Matthew's Animal Husbandry Farm might seem like just another rundown spot in the Mojave, but there's actually a super dark story hiding there. Scattered throughout the farm, you'll find torn diary pages that piece together what happened. Apparently, this was a small family-run farm around 2281. Just a couple and their kid. One day, the parents left to head over to Camp Searchlight to grab some supplies, but they never came back. After a few days of waiting, the kid decides to go look for them, and what they find was straight up heartbreaking. Turns out Camp Searchlight had been completely irradiated thanks to some Legion sabotage, and the child's parents didn't make it out as humans. They had been turned into feral ghouls, and when they found them, they attacked in a panic. The kid had to shoot them and then run. Back at the farm, things didn't exactly improve. Alone, traumatized, and barely holding it together, the child starts to spiral. The diary entries get darker, accusing the animals, which were malnourished Brahmin and bighorners, of plotting to take over the farm. They become convinced that they're turning into ghouls too and wants to stop them before it's too late. And then in the final page, they make a decision. If the animals want the farm, they can't have it. So the child sets the farmhouse on fire while still inside. When you read it for the first time, your heart just kind of drops. It's a little shocking, honestly.
Welcome to the headquarters of the Sunset Sarsaparilla Company. Wrangle up a stool and listen to old Festus jaw a while.
What's New Vegas's favorite drink? I'll give you a hint. It isn't Nuka-Cola. Sunset Sarsaparilla is the most popular drink in the West. But did you ever stop to wonder what's actually in this legendary soda? Founded way back in 1918, the Sunset Sarsaparilla Company built an empire around its iconic beverage, whose popularity soared nationwide and even into Canada by the year 2077. Of course, success breeds imitation, and even Nuka-Cola tried to mimic its flavor with their own Nuka-Cola Wild. But Sunset Sarsaparilla had a darker side, and before the bombs fell, a controversial study broadcasted on national television claimed the drink caused a shocking array of side effects. From nausea and dizziness to anxiety, tooth decay, organ damage, and ironically, even digital numbness. The company fiercely denied these claims but quietly ramped up their public relations efforts to save face and preserve profits.
If you hear about the health advisory that aired on Channel 6 recently, say, silly old advisory.
Adding to the intrigue, an urban legend emerged just before the Great War. Rumor had it, special bottle caps marked with a blue star could earn you an incredible prize from the Sunset Sarsaparilla Company. Kind of like hunting for that special star on lollipop wrappers as a kid that we all used to do, and we always found it too. Even better, if you've played New Vegas's Honest Hearts add-on, you might have discovered a secret. A recipe to craft your very own homebrewed version of Sunset Sarsaparilla. All it takes is a single bottle cap, an empty Sunset Sarsaparilla bottle, Nevada agave fruit, and some Xander root. While the root sadly isn't something you'll find at your local grocery store, the internet has speculated it might taste something like a ginger root. So if you ever wanted to whip up your own sunset inspired soda at home, ginger might just be your secret ingredient. To be honest, I'm not a huge soda person, so y'all have to let me know in the comments if you tried recreating it and if it was worth the effort. The Holy Frag Grenade is a unique weapon in New Vegas that many of us never got to experience or use. Hidden deep within the irradiated ruins of Camp Searchlight lies this unique and devastatingly powerful weapon. Available exclusively to players who choose the Wild Wasteland trait, the Holy Frag Grenade isn't your ordinary explosive. It's a playful homage to Monty Python's classic comedy, The Holy Grail. Complete with a white cross painted dramatically on its side, this grenade packs a heavenly punch, dealing significantly more direct and explosive damage than a standard frag grenade. But the Holy Frag Grenade isn't just powerful, it's uniquely accessible, requiring absolutely no explosive skills to wield, unlike its mundane counterparts. Unfortunately, Divine Intervention only blesses players with 3 grenades total. These explosive treasures never respawn, making every throw a monumental decision, so use them sparingly if at all. Getting your hands on these sacred grenades isn't easy either. They're guarded fiercely by 2 golden geckos lurking in the basement of a church, reinforcing their holy and dangerous aura. If your character has the loose cannon trait or the splash damage perk, be warned. Escaping the grenade's powerful blast might be a challenge, and even deadly creatures who survive the blast will turn hostile. Without the Wild Wasteland trait, there will be too many nukes sitting in lieu of the grenades instead. Fun fact, the Holy Frag Grenade's roots trace all the way back to Fallout 2, where developers initially planned a Holy Hand Grenade encounter inspired by Monty Python, but sadly never implemented it, at least yet. Next time you're roaming the Mojave with the Wild Wasteland trait, make a pilgrimage to Camp Searchlight and enjoy.
Barton Thorne is a prospector living near Good Springs in 2281. Not much is known about Barton or his motives, but he tries to deceive the courier by telling them to kill the geckos on the ridge to save his girl. Afterward, he tries to kill the courier in order to retrieve a treasure stashed at the ridge overlook. Well, interestingly, Note to Self is a paper note which was cut from the final version of Fallout New Vegas. According to its editor ID, the note was actually meant to be assigned to Barton Thorne. It says this: "Remember not to roll off the cliff and kill yourself while you're sleeping. You'll show her, you'll show everyone. What does too stupid to live even mean anyway?" This dude was having a manic episode, clearly. I'm not sure why the note was cut from the game though, but it's always fun shedding light on the cut content anyway. If you ever find yourself wandering south of Nipton Road pit stop, you might stumble across the Scorpion Burrow. This place is an unmarked location in the dry lake bed, and it's exactly what it sounds like. A nasty little hideout full of rad scorpions. Outside of the burrow, things are already sketchy. We run into a bunch of giant rad scorpions, and just to make it more chaotic, a pack of night stalkers. And those two groups don't get along and will usually start fighting each other, unless they spot you. Then congratulations, you become target number 1. Now if you're a psychopath and decide to head inside, the burrow itself is just one long tunnel that opens up into 2 larger rooms. It's not a maze or anything, but it's full of scorpions. Right near the entrance, you'll come across a dead wastelander, and deeper there are 2 more bodies, including 2 more wastelanders, a dead Jackal gang member, and a prospector who clearly didn't make it. At the end of the tunnel is where the real nightmare begins. The Rad Scorpion Queen. She is massive, tough, and absolutely not messing around. This is an arachnophobe's absolute nightmare. And I know they're not spiders, but they kind of elicit that same feeling. If you know, you know. Anyways, it's a pretty crazy place that's just unmarked and found in a hole in the middle of the desert. I love it.
I remember even finding that when I went through.
So there's this little oddity called the storage room safe note. It's just a scrap of paper you can pick up, and it's supposed to be the password for a terminal in the basement of the RepCon test site. You get this note automatically added to your Pip-Boy after checking out an entry called Storage Room Terminal on one of the administrator's terminals. It's on the 2nd floor of the RepCon facility. It says, "Hi Steve, we finished converting that old generator room into storage, like you asked. If you need to get into the safe, the password is RepCon. Thanks, Bill." Now here's the funny part. The terminal in the basement that this note is supposed to unlock, well, it's already unlocked by default. So the password is basically useless. Most people figure it was just part of some cut content or an idea that didn't make it into the final version of the game. Thanks, Bill. You know, a lot of people never really mess with the Misfortune perk, which is kind of a shame because it's actually one of the most bizarre and interesting perks in the game. Once you've got it, there's a 10% chance that misfortune will show up when you use VATS. It's kind of like the mysterious stranger, she pops in and out of nowhere to lend a hand, but this one's with a twist. Instead of finishing off enemies like the stranger does, Misfortune doesn't deal much direct damage. Instead, she stuns enemies, basically knocking them out or fatigues them. But her attacks do more than just daze people. She can randomly mess up multiple enemies in an area and even has a high chance of damaging or completely breaking their weapons. That does include grenades, by the way. If she hits someone holding one, it might explode right in their hands. And just like she shows up suddenly, she vanishes just as quick once the VAT sequence ends. Now technically you can pick up both the Misfortune and Mysterious Stranger perks in the same playthrough, but they'll never appear together. They share the same activation trigger, so it's always one or the other. There are theories about who or what Misfortune actually is. Nobody knows for sure. Some fans think she might be immortal, maybe even something cosmic or eldritch, but she definitely doesn't behave like a normal person. She seems to attach herself to people involved in big world-changing events, like the Courier. So is she some kind of time cop, keeping things on track by protecting key players? Maybe, or maybe she's some kind of fear-feeding entity that draws energy from adrenaline and danger, appearing only when her meal ticket, which is you, is in trouble. Or here's a wild one, what if she's just some poor soul who got tangled up in a Vault-Tec experiment gone wrong? Maybe she's permanently bonded with a Pip-Boy and phases in and out of reality whenever VATS is triggered. If that's the case, man, I really don't want to know what kind of dimension she gets yanked back to between appearances. So yeah, Misfortune might not be as flashy as the Mysterious Stranger, but there's definitely more going on underneath the surface. Whether she's a glitch in reality, a timeline guardian, or just a walking Vault-Tec horror story, we'll probably never know. It's another mystery we probably won't ever solve, and we have no other pieces of lore mentioning her outside of the perk, unlike the Mysterious Stranger.
Before getting into the Repcon sign, we wanted to give a quick refresher of what the original site was. Once a bustling rocket launch facility poised to merge with Robco Industries, Repcon's fate took a shitty turn following a disastrous waste spill. When Robco executives arrived to inspect, the spill severely damaged Repcon's standing, spiraling into a blame game between Steve Reynolds, the launch facility project manager, and Martin, a senior engineer. Reynolds accused Martin of negligence, while Martin pointed fingers at Reynolds' harsh working conditions. Ultimately, the merger fell apart, leaving the Repcon site abandoned and forgotten. Now about that missing O from the Repcon site. Wander over to Gibson's scrapyard and you'll uncover a cool Easter egg. The O from the Repcon sign is repurposed by none other than Old Lady Gibson herself, as her favorite chair of course. It's a subtle and often overlooked connection between Old Gibson and the test site. Old Lady Gibson fondly reminisces how she and her late husband spent years scavenging the Repcon test site and making a living by selling whatever scraps they could salvage. It's these small but thoughtful details, like a scavenger's prized possession being a repurposed piece of the Wasteland's history, that make New Vegas so memorable. Usually, I don't try and take the time to enjoy the small moments like this to appreciate this humble chair, but the O from Repcon's forgotten past and the quiet story it tells about resilience and adaptation in the Wasteland is a cool thing to see, since it's likely what people would have to do if they were in her situation. In her type of lifestyle, you'd really have to make do with what you got.
Ring-a-ding, baby, ta-ta.
If you've wandered the neon-soaked streets of New Vegas, you've undoubtedly crossed paths with Benny, the slick, fast-talking head of the chairman and mastermind behind a bold plot to seize control of New Vegas from Mr. House. Benny isn't just any secondary antagonist. He's charismatic, cunning, and surprisingly charming when he wants to be. At least that's what the ladies say. But here's something you might have missed. If your courier was female and chose a rather intimate approach in dealing with Benny, meaning you slept with him, and then generously spared his life afterward, he leaves behind a unique, somewhat cheeky note known as the thanks baby note. Now, I realize that these are a lot of ifs. For instance, I never once thought to play as a female courier, nor did I think to try and sleep with Benny, nor would I even think to spare the sap's life. But if the stars aligned and that was your playthrough, then this is likely old news. But for me, and likely a large portion of you watching, enjoy the listen. Pussycat, thanks for showing this cat the best hey he's ever. Talk about platinum and fuck, let's redo it. Pussycat, thanks for showing this cat the best hey he's ever. Talk about platinum in the sack toots. Where'd you learn that 18 karat trick with the heels of your feet? You didn't just make my toes curl, they popped off and rolled under the bed. I wish I could stay for another round, but this gent's got places to be and things to do. You showing up has forced my hand, baby. The time to act is now. I won't be around for a while, but if everything works out right, you and me are a date, got it? Wouldn't miss it for all the caps in Vegas. Now don't get clingy and try to follow me. Ciao, Benny. I hope you enjoyed my take on Benny. I probably didn't do him the service he needs, but he's a piece of shit anyways, guys.
Private Kyle Edwards is an NCR soldier turned ghoul found at Camp Searchlight. He's holed up in a Searchlight home northwest of the elementary school. If he meets your companion Raul, you might have an interaction like this.
Cheer up, kid. It's not that bad. Sure, your skin rots off, and you start to stink like a public toilet after Cinco de Mayo. But,
What? How is that not bad? In fact, how could it get worse?
Well, assuming you survive the radiation sickness, the lynch mobs, and the possibility of going feral, one day, you'll get old and decrepit, like me.
Oh, God.
What? Was it something I said?
I'll keep this one short. Think of something reminiscent of Oblivion's paintbrushes, an inanimate object with a weird trait. In order to see what I mean, start by spending your entire day playing New Vegas, playing through the main quest line, various side quests, and then getting to the point of delirium. Once you're at this point, take out a shotgun and go shoot a tumbleweed or two. As demonstrated, these seemingly lightweight, innocuous plants don't behave as you'd expect. Instead of scattering or disintegrating, tumbleweeds react with bizarre physics, bouncing erratically or shooting off at unnatural speeds and angles. A lot of players don't really think about shooting tumbleweeds, so it's a quirk in the game that goes unnoticed often. But once you know, then it's hard not to shoot them when you see them. Yes, we're still on tumbleweeds. Are they alive? Are they sentient? Fallout almost introduced something even stranger than tumbleweeds that defied physics. They almost introduced sentient, radioactive tumbleweeds. Yes, you heard that right. Not only were these bizarre wasteland flora alive, but they also had a mind of their own. Hidden deep within the game's resources lies an unused entity known simply as the radioactive tumbleweed. Classified as an actual creature rather than an object, these crusty plants emitted radiation on par with a glowing one. And they could independently roll around the Mojave and even add health, meaning you could kill them. So why didn't these haunting glowing weeds make the final cut? New Vegas' designer Joshua Sawyer explained that the radioactive tumbleweeds were ultimately removed because their inclusion caused significant game-breaking bugs. Despite the concerns, I could just imagine wandering the Mojave at night, the unsettling green glow of radiation in the distance, only to realize it wasn't a ghoul or a glowing radroach, but a rolling sentient weed silently hunting you down. While this bizarre concept didn't quite make it into the final game, I wonder if there will be an Easter egg in the TV show's second season. If so, you'll likely be one of the few to know that it's at all an Easter egg. What does the rows of Sharon Cassidy, Gannon, and Veronica have in common? I mean, aside from their wit or unique backstories. Any ideas? They're all quietly linked by a membership in a secret, oddly named faction buried within the game's code. The Don't Tase Me Bro faction. But what's the purpose of the secret group with a name that represents the early 2000s so well? Simply put, it's designed to prevent these beloved companions from getting tased, or in Mojave terms, vaporized, by the vigilant Stripgate Securitrons. It's essentially a hidden safety net that ensures Cass, Arcade, and Veronica won't meet an untimely and shocking demise at the hands of these security bots. While this little detail isn't as grand or conspiratorial as, say, the Illuminati, it's still a secret faction that we sadly don't get to be a part of. But it's nice knowing our friends get some diplomatic community in the lawless West.
Let's talk about the Lake Lurk Hunter theory. This idea popped up in the community after players kept stumbling across dead or wounded Lake Lurks out in the wild. Now sure, that could just mean they got into a scrap with other creatures, maybe even other Lake Lurks. Maybe there's some weird internal drama in the Lake Lurk world we don't understand yet. But things get strange when you realize every single Lake Lurk corpse people found was totally cleaned out. There was no Lake Lurk meat left behind, and that's not normal. Usually when an NPC or creature dies in a fight, there's still lootable stuff on them. The meat's always there unless something or someone took it. And it doesn't stop there. In the same areas, players started finding Lake Lurk egg clutches completely emptied out. They're not just damaged or broken, but picked clean. Like someone came in, knew what they were doing, and took exactly what they wanted. Another weird thing is it's never a total bloodbath. Some Lake Lurks are left alive, and you never find the bodies of whatever or whoever fought them. That's super unusual. Normally in a big fight between creatures, the losers' bodies are right there on the ground. Not here. So the theory started forming. What if there's a lake lurk hunter out there? Not just some random wastelander, but someone that's really skilled. Like expert level stealth, sharpshooter, and probably trained in sustainable hunting practices. Maybe this person's studying lake lurks, trying to learn more about their biology and behavior. Or maybe they've been hired by some faction for some secret job. Or hey, maybe they're just out there living off the land, but with a weirdly focused obsession on hunting lake lurks. Some people think the hunter avoids energy weapons too, because in all the supposed hunting sites, there's zero plasma residue or blast damage. So odds are they're using regular firearms, no flashy tech, just classic bullets and stealth. There's no mention of a lake lurk hunter anywhere in the game's files. No NPC, no hidden quest, nothing in the coding. Which means for now, this whole theory is based entirely on what players have pieced together from clues in the game world. But that mystery, that's part of what makes it so compelling. Is it just a coincidence, or did Obsidian sneak in some unspoken wasteland legend for players to uncover? There's this weird little item in the game called the Evil Gnome. At first glance, it looks just like your average garden gnome. Same size, same weight, same, hey, I've been sitting in someone's yard too long thing. But instead of the usual goofy grin and the red hat, this guy's wearing a creepy scowl and some black rimmed glasses. He's not here to brighten your garden. He's here to judge it. There are actually two versions of the Evil Gnome in the game. They're functionally identical, same value and same weight, but they've got different internal IDs. One's labeled the Gaudy Gnome and the other's the Scotty Gnome. If you want to find one, you can find the Scotty Gnome version deep in the Fireroot Cavern. It's up in the part of the cave that leads you out from the irradiated pool area filled with the fire geckos. The gnome's kind of hidden among some plants, so it's easy to miss. Plus, with all the geckos running around or bumping into things, it can get knocked out of the original spot. The second one, the Gaudy Gnome, is way easier to find. It's sitting on a dresser in the Lucky 38 presidential suite. So if you're into weird collectibles, there you go. But knowing you guys, you're definitely going for both. The Evil Gnome is actually a nod to Fallout New Vegas' lead world builder Scott Everts. Hence the editor ID Scotty Gnome. And yeah, the gnome even kind of looks like him, which makes it even better, I guess. Next time you're decorating your home, maybe give the Evil Gnome a spot on the shelf. Just don't turn your back on it.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. I hate you.
There's this title in Caesar's Legion that most players probably gloss over unless they're digging deep into the lore. This. You didn't think I'd actually try to pronounce that, right? I'm sure it sounds super official and fancy in Latin, but it basically translates to Consul of the Offices of Slavery. Yeah, that kind of job. The role exists within the inner workings of Caesar's Legion, and it's all about managing the slave trade. The guy running things in 2281 is M. Licinius Crassus, and under him are administrators like this. These dudes are the paper pushers of human trafficking. They're in charge of writing up legal-looking documents for slave sales and purchases. It's cold, organized, and very much how part of the Legion keeps its system running. Now, if you've done the One for My Baby quest in Novak, you might have stumbled across a holotape called the Bill of Sale. You find it inside an easy lock safe at the Dino Delight front desk. It's the smoking gun that confirms what Craig Boone already suspects. His wife Carla Boone was sold into slavery by none other than Jeannie Mae Crawford. The holotape straight up spells it out. It's written in that creepy formal legal tone, saying the Legion bought Carla Boone and even her unborn child for a total of 1,500 bottle caps. It promises that both of them are sound, healthy, and slaves for life. There's even a clause saying they owe Jeannie Mae another 500 caps if the baby is born successfully. The whole thing is signed by that guy on behalf of the consul. It's a reminder of how brutal and bureaucratic the Legion can be. They're not just about fighting and conquering. They've got a whole system behind the scenes keeping their cruelty running like a well-oiled machine. And Jeannie Mae, she was complicit in all of it, selling out Boone's family like it was just business.
This one is infamous to say the least, and although it's deep, the theory has quite the cult following. On the far edge of the Mojave sits a shack with no real purpose. No quests, no enemies, no loot worth mentioning. Just an old trailer and some dusty electronics, and a busted radio tower. This is Lone Wolf Radio, and for years it's been the center of one of Fallout's most unsettling myths. According to Fallout urban legend, Lone Wolf Radio wasn't always so lifeless. It was once home to a cut character known simply as the Lone Wolf, a deranged and sadistic radio host broadcasting cryptic, disturbing rants across the Mojave. His show aired at random times during the day, filled with violent ramblings, but it always went silent at 11 p.m. Then, at 3 a.m., the broadcast would return, with the Lone Wolf and a child, a different child every night. Each time, the Lone Wolf would eerily announce, "Everyone is gone. You are all alone. Let it all end," before unaliving the child live on air. Listening in at the right time would trigger a quest called Little Dead Riding Hood, where the courier would have to track down the killer or join him. It was said that joining the Lone Wolf granted a perk allowing you to unalive children in-game, something previously impossible in the Fallout series. Of course, this content never made it to the final build. Supposedly, it was cut due to its disturbing nature and the technical demand of recording dozens of unique script murders. Creepy, right? Well, here's the truth. According to New Vegas' developer Denise McMurray, who designed the location, the real inspiration came from a conspiracy theorist she encountered at the University of Oregon. She imagined what would happen if that guy went from shouting on street corners to broadcasting from a backwater pirate radio tower. The rest? It's all pure fanfiction, a modern creepypasta. Even Josh Sawyer, the game's director, addressed the myth in a Twitch Q&A, saying flat out, "It's completely made up. All that stuff about Lone Wolf Radio is completely made up." To be honest, it's impressive that the theory was so loud at the time that even the game's director caught wind. Still, the location's name and setup draw subtle influence from Wolfman Jack, a real-life underground radio icon from the 1960s who broadcast from Mexico, eluding authorities and sparking countless urban legends. Though, I don't think child unalivings were on his list of notoriety. Whether you believe the myth or not, the silence coming from that lonely tower still sends shivers down the spines of curious couriers everywhere.
Ever stop to wonder who actually runs the Mojave Music Radio in New Vegas? I mean, it's just there, playing old tunes non-stop without a DJ, no announcements, no commentary, just the music from the bygone era. Compared to someone like Mr. New Vegas, MMR feels eerily quiet. There are some theories. Maybe there's some lone survivalist holed up in a hidden bunker or a dusty warehouse, still spinning records or holotapes on pre-war radio gear. No talking or jokes, just music. Maybe the songs are all he has left to remind him of the world before everything went to hell. He doesn't care about ratings or reaching people, it's just for him, and whoever's out there still listening. Some people think this might actually be coming from Lone Wolf Radio, the little trailer you can find out in the desert. The story goes that someone might have lived there, set up a looping playlist of their favorite oldies, and then either died or just walked away from it all. There are scribbles and messages on the wall inside the trailer suggesting that the person who set it up might have done it right before the bombs dropped, and maybe took their own life after everything fell apart. So if that's true, Mojave Music Radio might just be some old playlist on loop, still playing decades later untouched. A piece of the pre-war world that just keeps going even though the world that made it is long gone. Weirdly, it plays the exact same music loop of the Black Mountain broadcast, just without Tabitha interrupting here and there. Maybe that's a connection. Maybe it's just House and he created another station. Currently, we have no solid proof of where it is located and no mentions beyond the broadcast itself. Kinda creeps me out knowing that someone's just out there being quiet behind all of these songs. Here's the theory that's been floating around. What if the fiends aren't fully aware of what they're doing? I mean, yeah, they're dangerous, sadistic, and completely unhinged, but what if part of it comes from the fact that they're basically hallucinating reality 24/7? These guys are constantly on chems that mess with your head, like severely. Psycho, for example, increases aggression and lowers inhibitions. Jet messes with your perception of time. Combine those with long-term use and you've got a brain that's not even close to working right. So what if, in their warped minds, they're not even seeing the wasteland as we do? Now, I'm not saying that they see regular people as literal demons or monsters, because let's be real, some of the stuff they would do gets weird in a whole new way if that were the case. But what maybe they don't see is innocence as innocent. Maybe they just see threats or shadows or something else entirely. They might not see a settler, just a blur of movement and a rush of adrenaline. Not a person begging for their life, but something getting in their way. It doesn't excuse their actions, not by a long shot, but it could explain why they're so relentlessly violent and unhinged. They might be so far gone from reality that they don't know who they're hurting, or they just don't care. Some people even bring up how you can find dead civilians in fiend territory who look like they were absolutely torn apart. There's no context or story, just carnage. That lines up with this theory that their violence isn't always calculated. It's reactive and chaotic, maybe even driven by hallucinations. And let's not forget, a lot of fiends were likely just desperate people from outer Vegas. Poor, addicted, abandoned, and then dragged into this hellish lifestyle by promises of more chems and safety in numbers. So what do you think? Are the fiends fully conscious monsters, or are they victims of their own chem-fueled madness, fighting hallucinations in a world they can't even process anymore? The theory here doesn't have much substance beyond our understanding of addicts in the real world, and it's mostly just circumstantial stuff. But I thought it was still an interesting one to include because it does make some sense. More than likely, there probably are some fiends that are too far gone and more like animals, but there are definitely fiends that still have a sharp mind and know exactly what they're doing.
For many of us, the road is a difficult one, but the path is always there for us to follow, no matter how many times we may fall.
Let's start with the Visionaries. In Fallout 1, we meet Richard Gray, better known as the Master, a brilliant doctor who, after a fateful dip in the FEV vats at Mariposa, transforms into a twisted being with a singular goal: unite the wasteland under the super mutants. Fast forward to Fallout New Vegas, and we have Edward Sallow, the man who becomes Caesar. Using his knowledge as a former follower of the Apocalypse, he captivates tribes in the wasteland, rallying them into the formidable military machine called Caesar's Legion. Both the Master and Caesar shape grand ideologies meant to shape the new world. The Master envisions the Unity, a new evolutionary step for humanity through the forced evolutionary virus, while Caesar pushes to unify the Wasteland's tribes under an iron-fisted empire modeled after ancient Rome. But every Visionary has a loyal companion or lieutenant at their side, at least for a while. In Fallout 1, Harold was one of the few survivors alongside Richard Gray during the Mariposa expedition. He was a merchant and adventurer who also got exposed to the FEV virus, though his transformation was less extreme. Where Gray evolved into the Master, Harold became a ghoul who spent much of his time wandering and spreading tall tales of what happened. In New Vegas, Joshua Graham, once a quiet Mormon missionary, became Caesar's feared right hand, the first legate of the Legion. He earned a ruthless reputation on the battlefield, and together, he and Caesar built the Legion from the ground up, forging a path of conquest across the Southwest. Despite their early bonds, both pairs split in a major life-changing way. When the Master embraces the idea of turning Wastelanders into super mutants, Harold sees a nightmare. Though Harold isn't a direct enemy of the Unity, he becomes a living symbol of the horrific risks and moral costs of the Master's vision. Ultimately, Harold remains a ghoul, wandering from place to place, detached from any grand cause. Meanwhile, Caesar blames Joshua Graham for the Legion's failure at the first Battle of Hoover Dam, condemning him to be burned alive and thrown into the Grand Canyon. Against all odds, Graham survives and emerges as the legendary Burned Man. Where Harold mostly drifts, Graham seeks redemption and battles with his own violent past, adopting a new faith-driven approach while remaining forever scarred by Caesar's betrayal. Both Harold and Graham carry physical and psychological wounds that serve as a permanent reminder of what happened. Harold is disfigured by ghoulification. Over time, a little tree named Bob, or Herbert depending on who you ask, grows from his head, marking him as a truly unique figure in the wasteland. Joshua Graham is wrapped in bandages from head to toe, his body burned beyond recognition. He grapples with guilt over his brutal actions as Caesar's legate, searching for some form of spiritual penance in Zion Canyon. These scars speak to the heavy cost of following great and terrible leaders. The last key parallel? Both lieutenants now stand in an ironic defiance to the grand ideologies they were once a part of. Harold was never fully aligned with the Master's Unity, but he's an everlasting testament to the beginnings of that experiment, a walking story about what happens when you tamper with nature. Joshua Graham was once the most devout soldier of Caesar's Legion. Now he atones for the violence he committed in Caesar's name, living in defiance of his former master's legacy. Whether through apathy in Harold's case or a spiritual rebirth in Graham's, both characters ultimately reject or outgrow their leader's ideologies. So where do these parallels leave us? They highlight a timeless theme in the Fallout franchise: how one charismatic figure's ambition can profoundly reshape another's life. In each case, these followers live on, scarred physically and mentally as a living history of their leader's rise and fall.
At first glance, he's great. He's cheerful even. He's helpful. He's programmed literally to agree with everything you say. He helps you ditch all the power players. House, NCR, Legion, and he gives you the option to take control of New Vegas for yourself, which is total freedom, right? But then he drops this one line, this one single line at the end of the Independent Vegas ending.
I found some code snippets in one of Mr. House's databanks that will let me, reprogram my personality to be a little more assertive, basically.
And that's where the theory begins. Because the second Yes Man says a little more assertive, fans everywhere suddenly felt a disturbance in the force. That line flips a switch from this robot's just a tool to wait, is this guy going to evolve? Yes Man was programmed by Mr. House's systems, but modified by Benny. The idea was simple, make a version of House's Securitron AI that doesn't say no, and that's it. He's all smiles and no free will. But what's the catch? Well, he's also got adaptive programming. That means he can learn, self-modify, and upgrade. That's pretty dangerous in a post-apocalyptic world, because once a machine starts to improve itself, it's only a matter of time before it starts making decisions. Not taking orders, but giving them. On the surface, the line seems harmless. Yes Man just wants to be more helpful, right? But when you think about it, who's he helpful to? You're not around forever. Maybe your courier dies. Maybe you just vanish into legend like most lone wanderers tend to do. So now you've got a super intelligent, self-upgrading AI running Vegas, managing infrastructure, controlling an army of Securitrons, and possibly reprogramming even more bots. At what point does being helpful turn into making decisions for the greater good, or at least his version of it? It starts with assertive and maybe ends with autonomous. This one little line is vague, it's unsettling, and it wasn't in his programming. If he can make himself assertive, what else can he do? You also never really get the option to shut Yes Man down. He runs Vegas after the game ends, and you give him control, and now he's learning and he's evolving. And worst of all, you trained him to follow your example. If your courier was ruthless, unpredictable, and power hungry, well, maybe Yes Man learned from the best. So is Yes Man evil? Not yet. But that's the terrifying part. He's not evil now, he's just friendly, helpful, and harmless until he's not. Because no one ever expects the smiling assistant to become the final boss. But when that assistant controls an entire city and an army of robots, yeah, you might want to start worrying. The Sierra Madre wasn't just a mysterious casino introduced in Dead Money. It was actually hiding in plain sight before the DLC even launched. There are multiple references to the Sierra Madre throughout the base game, showing that the developers had this haunted resort planned from the beginning. You can actually spot graffiti across the Mojave that hints at it. One of the most notable examples is on the side of the Nevada Highway Patrol Station, where someone scrawled, "I wish I was at the Sierra Madre," complete with a sad face next to it. That writing is there even if you don't have Dead Money installed. Then there's more. On a Corvega billboard near Junction 15, someone spray painted "Gone to Sierra Madre." And on the back of the Lucky 38 billboard near Sloan, another message says, "Left my heart at the Sierra Madre." These aren't one-off mentions, they're deliberate and repeated references placed throughout the wasteland. You'll also find promotional posters in places like the East Pump Station and Monte Carlo Suites. These posters show elegant women lounging with cocktails or draped across luxury furniture, with phrases like "Begin Again" printed on them. Exactly the same branding and messaging used inside the Sierra Madre itself. And those same posters even show up in postcard form next to the terminals and lockers, long before you ever get dragged to the real thing. Even the NCR acknowledges the place. By 2281, they named a military decoration after it, the Star of the Sierra Madre, which President Kimball was planning to award Jeremy Watson during his Hoover Dam visit. All of this shows that the Sierra Madre wasn't some isolated concept dropped in later. It was always part of the world, lurking just beneath the surface and waiting to pull you in. It's a brilliant bit of environmental storytelling that feels like the casino was watching you long before you ever set foot inside.
As Mason mentioned, we have another fully realized New Vegas Iceberg in the queue, so stay tuned and subscribe if you're into going all in on Fallout lore with us. We can't wait to show you just how deep the Fallout rabbit hole goes, and remember, enjoyed time is never wasted time, and we'll see you in the next.
Damn.